Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, it feels like, I don't want to say it's new because, you and I have been sports writers around here for a long time, and we've obviously gone on air after plenty of Lions losses, but it does feel a little bit different. The Lions had won 4 in a row. They go into Baltimore. They get a touchdown late. It's not much of a game. I think it's a jolt to the system a little bit, but yeah. So here we are under different circumstances. We want to break it down a little bit and not too much because we're getting away from it, and look ahead. And then the next segment, Carlos, we'll talk about your favorite school, the University of Michigan, and just all the shenanigans that they're accused of over there. And if you want to talk about bad trivia night games at Michigan State Stadium, and dictators appearing on scoreboards, we can do that too. If you, I know you're shaking your head. Yeah, no,
it's been a tough week for football in Michigan, hasn't it, Shawn?
It sure has. I think we talked about this on the other podcast, but at one point it was 77-0. If you're a Michigan State fan and a Lions fan,
that's
a
the
tough
Harbaugh
weekend. If you're a Michigan fan, yeah, exactly. But now that you've had a couple of days to think about what happened, you listened to Dan Campbell's press conference Monday. He had 24 hours or so to think about what happened, go over the film. I mean, what's your sense coming out of the news the other day, his thoughts, and just how this team's going to respond?
He could. I wrote about it that, if he'd been a racehorse, he would have been, nickering. He probably would have been biting the jockey or whatever. His nostrils would have been flared. There wasn't an anger to him on Monday, but there was this unsettled feeling about him, this aggravation. You could just sense it. And, he talked about it, being frustrated and being angry and stuff. And that nothing went right. If like we've said, if anybody watched or listened to our podcast and our YouTube video from the game Sunday when Shawn invited me over to his house and he watched it with his 2 sons, and they kept talking about, I don't even want to watch this or whatever, and this and that. And I've said this before to a lot of fans, you guys have the luxury of turning it off and going to rake leaves. Or we're being paid to watch this and write about it, but we have to stick through it. I stuck through all 0-16. You don't get to turn it off sometimes, as a sports writer. So you could sense the frustration. And for those fans who watched that game through its entirety, that nothing went right. It just offense, defense, everything was just terrible. They couldn't get anything going. I kind of kidded with Jay Burkett. He does his grades after every game, and the defense got straight Fs. Somehow he managed to give, I think, the running backs maybe an A-, and I don't know, the receivers or something, a B.
Jahmyr Gibbs played his best game in some ways. It was just kind of lost. I mean, he looked better. That's the best he's looked. Following was blocks. He looked more fundamental. He looked more relaxed. I think we talked about that during the game. So that's not shocking, right, Carlos? It just got lost in a 38-6.
Well, yeah, but also how much of that came in garbage time at the end, when the Ravens were playing more of a soft zone and stuff, and sure, go ahead and run the ball, run some clock down. I don't think he was doing a heck of a lot at the beginning of the game when they're going 3 and out, you could see a little bit of here an improvement, a play here and there, and Josh Reynolds catch, whatever, but just, how you score 6 points and then the offense doesn't get a straight Fs, I'm not sure either. I would say Jack Fox was the one guy who probably stood out, the punter, but it's just, it was terrible, right? So this does feel different. And Campbell, he said it very, some coaches are very coachy, very rah-rah, very, not in our house, and I blah, blah, blah. I'm going to make sure it's not going to happen. And, the famous Dennis Green, they're if you want to crown them, whatever. We know who they were and we let them off the hook and all that stuff. Campbell's not like that, but there was this quiet sort of confidence or determination in him, resoluteness about it, that he said, this isn't going to happen again. This is not going to happen this next week. It's not 100%. It's not going to happen. And they may not, they play on Monday night. They host the Raiders on Monday night. Who knows? They could lose. Anybody could lose any week, but I don't think they're going to get a no-show performance like this, maybe again this season. And like you talked about it, you wrote about it too, that, maybe they need some adversity. Campbell had mentioned that. And if it has to come, maybe it's better that it comes in the, 7th game of the season versus the 17th game when things matter more.
No, for sure. And it's interesting. There are a couple things that stood out to me with Dan Campbell and what he said Monday, but also after the game on Sunday, which we weren't privy to when we recorded on Sunday. So I want to mention that here. It's interesting to me, Carlos. Well, first of all, let me say this about Campbell and Monday before I make the larger point here. He you're talking about his demeanor and so forth, the willingness he has to sort of share at least part of the way he thinks, the process he thinks, the second guessing that we all do, every one of us. We all second guess ourselves, question ourselves, think about, okay, how could I have done that better? Did I make a mistake there? The fact that he's willing to get up, stand up at a podium and get before the microphone and speak like that, it speaks to a few things. One, he's comfortable with himself, right? I mean, he's not afraid to admit that he's still got things to learn. And, you heard him Monday. He was talking about how he structured the previous week's practice. He felt like with the nature of the physicality of the teams they played to that point, before Baltimore, just what they've been through, that he wanted to give them a light Wednesday. And they just sort of basically had a kind of a walkthrough. He said they threw a few routes, so a little bit of that, but there was no real contact. And it only lasted about an hour, and then they talked and probably watched some film and so forth. But the fact that he stood there Monday and said, that might have been a mistake, that thinking about Lamar Jackson, we probably should have had more contact. We probably should have repped this out and repped that out more than we did. Just the fact, Carl, before I make my other point about Campbell, I just wanted to ask you about that. What do you think that says about him as a coach, just his willingness to do that?
It is why the media likes him so much. I mean, let's just be real. I think if you're a fan too, you appreciate that honesty, that willingness to share. And he does this all this time from the very beginning of talking about when he forgot to schedule the joint practices, which, by the way, as we've come to learn, or I've come to learn at least, is he considers those joint practices apparently more valuable than the preseason games. Like, he loves these joint practices. So for him to have fumbled that logistic and admit we're not having them, not because they just didn't happen or couldn't get on the same page with another team, but because I screwed up. I didn't realize, as a first-time rookie head coach, in full control, I didn't realize we had to schedule them way early in advance. And then when he, cut Don Muehlbach on his birthday, and then the next day said, I'm a, bleep hole for doing that. He owned it. It speaks to his introspection, his self-awareness, his willingness to be pretty honest. I mean, when, with the standards of coaching and how much people are scared to say too much or the wrong thing, he's pretty forthcoming. And I think that is the magic of Dan Campbell. It's not the rah-rah, the Newt Rockne speech. That's not why players like him and respond to him. That's not why the media, that's not why people respond to him. It's because he's a genuine person. That's hard to find. It's uncommon in today's sports landscape. So yeah, it says a lot. And it also says to me, it gains your trust. If he's willing to be this honest and he's thinking about, should I have done it? Should I have not? And I'm sure he's talking to his coaches and, bouncing things off them. What do you think? Should we not? Should he be as heavy this week? Should he go full pads? Should we, because it's a tough balance, right? As you get into the season of how much physical, contact do you need in practice? Because there's also the risk of injury. So that to me says a lot about why he's a good coach, because he thinks a lot about, what is necessary. If you guys remember in the Hard Knocks clip last year, when he was telling them about going hard and going in full pads in the summer in the heat, he knows it's hard. He was a player, and he says, he told them, I promise you, I wouldn't make you do this unless I thought it was absolutely necessary for us to get prepared and get to where we want to be in our preparation. And that says something, because sometimes some of these coaches are like little tyrants. If you guys remember Rod Marinelli, and I think this was before there were more rules in place in the league for protocols for practicing, but he used to pad, like late in the year, he would pad them up like 3 straight days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was just, I don't know what, he had to prove something to himself, and I'm the general and this and that. Like, it's stupid. That's the kind of guy who goes 0-16. So Campbell's not that guy. He's the opposite of that. So that says a lot to me.
No, it does. And the other thing that sort of stood out to me, and he said this after the game Sunday, and then said a couple of comments that were related, I think, during his weekly Monday press conference. And again, this comes down to coaching. And I think it's relevant in terms of the perspective that we have in the media, that the fan base has, and what the Baltimore game meant. And I wrote about this a little bit too. There's a point in his Sunday postgame press conference where he starts to say, we're not, and he was going to fill in the blank about what they're not, about what they're not capable of. And he said, we're not that. And then he paused briefly and then said that again and said that type of team. And it was in the context of, if everybody's not doing their job, and I know that's a cliche in football, but there's a lot of truth to it, right? If you don't have all 11 guys doing their job, the implication is we're not good enough, right? We're not good enough. But he didn't want to say that, but he kind of was saying it, but he didn't want to say it outright. And I don't think it's because he's trying to protect his players in any way. Just he has a good sense of, because we've heard him be really frank about this player needs to do X, Y, Z to get better. He's not afraid to say that, right? But it's just the way he goes about it, and it's the tone. So on Sunday, and there's a frustration of that loss and that performance, he realized he was thinking more about what he had not done, how he had not taught them or prepared them or whatever, and the staff, as opposed to, God, I wish the roster was a little bit better, and that's going to leak out the side of my mouth. He wasn't going to do that. So, but at the same time, he did say when he says we're not that type of team, that they're not quite there yet. I mean, you and I were joking. They had headlines the week before about Super Bowls and number one seeds, and it's understandable because the fan base is just, it's been a while to feel this way, so they're getting really excited, and that's human nature to a degree. But I wanted to get your take on that, because not just his strategy and how he relayed the information, and he kind of doubled down on that a little bit Monday in a couple of spots, but just, it's not that he wants to reset the perspective, the expectation. He's not trying to do that at all. Maybe we need to remind folks a little bit of that, because everything is still out there, the division, the home playoff game, all that. But it is a reminder what we saw and how he said and talked about after the game, Carlos, and then Monday, of what this team really is, right? They're still a good team, but they're probably not as talented yet as the 2 or 3 or 4 elite teams in the league.
Yeah. And that's, that him stopping himself, I think, is, as he's probably had a little, like in the cartoons, a little bubble picture of Brad Holmes in there. And I can't basically saying this is kind of throwing Brad under the bus a little bit. We're not good enough. We're not talented enough. As Brad spits out his coffee or whatever, does a spit take, like, what do you mean we're not good at, look at the roster I've given you. So, they're coworkers. You have to be careful of what you say. But he's right. If he did actually imply that, they're not good enough, they're not deep enough. They're not so good. They're not world beaters right now. They're a very good team, and they have a lot of good players, promising players. They've got some good role players, but they just aren't like this, we can miss a beat and still beat a really good team on the road. And, the one thing that he can't say, that he wouldn't say, is that you have to look at it from the other side sometimes. And even though they always give each other, oh, that's a good team, blah, blah, blah. Everybody gives each other respect. The Ravens were motivated, and I wrote about that, that
super
part
motivated.
Of it, yeah. And part of it is the Lions, and probably the preparation and the coaches, and they could have done more, whatever. It's also hard to stay in the red line all the time. And I think that's what makes someone like the Patriots, what they did, their run. Anytime these teams get on runs, the Steelers and the Patriots and whatever, and they stay there for years, that's incredible, because they're such a powerhouse team, really good teams, but they get everybody's best shot. Oh, the Patriots are coming. We've got to play the Patriots. We got to play Brady. We got to play Belichick. We got to play, they get their best shot. And that's what's hard. When you're when you're the king and everybody's, like the old gunslinger and everybody's coming for you, everybody's trying to make a name, against the gunslinger, the top dog, that's hard to maintain that status. And the Ravens definitely, Harbaugh got them to really buy into hey, people are saying this team's better. This is the number one team. This is the number one defense. They're on the rise. There's headlines out of Detroit about they know how to knock people out and the Super Bowls and stuff and number one seed in the conference. And so are they going to come into M&T Bank Stadium and push us around? And they there was something to that. They were motivated to show we're for real. And also, as you pointed out, in our questions and in our post-game podcast, is it clicked finally with it. This is what Lamar Jackson, all the questions, we get the transcripts from these teams, we're able to look at the questions and the answers in the post-game. And a lot of them were for the offense, for Harbaugh and for Lamar and for, the other guys, Gus Edwards, running back, like, is this what this offense can be? Is this what we've been waiting for? Because now that Lamar's trying to be, in the pocket, traditional, more pocket quarterback instead of running and getting hurt and missing time. And this is like, yeah, you guys finally did it. And you did it against one of the best defenses in the NFL. So this is a huge feather in their cap. And then one of the headlines in Baltimore was it was a statement game. But that alone is pretty incredible, right? That the Lions are a statement game for anybody.
It's crazy. No, it's really something. And it hadn't been that long. We're talking about 7 weeks into the season, and folks are running around talking about statement games and so on and so forth. But no, and by the way, real quickly, thinking about New England, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here necessarily, but the Lions, to your point, the Lions are going to have to get used to that. Some of that's going to be, okay, they're the national darlings, and these guys are upstarts. We want to show them. But in order to build a program, and Dan Campbell's talked about this, he mentioned it with, I think he used Pittsburgh and Baltimore as examples, and he's been pretty consistent about that since he was hired, that those are two programs. I like the way he says programs. It's like college. That he wants to emulate, that they want to, build like. New England's a little bit different because you get Tom Brady, and Pittsburgh and Baltimore have done it. They've been consistently good on and off for a long, long time with different quarterbacks. So New England's a little bit more of an outlier, kind of like Kansas City. But one thing about New England, you were talking about everybody getting their best shot or giving New England their best shot. Not only that, because they were so successful year in and year out, they got the schedule. They got the kind of schedule the Lions, for example, don't have right now.
Yeah.
The more you win, the tougher teams you're going to face by and large. Some teams can unexpectedly fall off, but to do that year after year after year, knowing how tough that schedule is also going to be part of it. If the Lions want to get to where they're going to go, they're going to have to face a lot of that, don't you think?
Absolutely. They're going to have to do that. And they're going to get that. That's why that's the biggest concern to me about this game. And I didn't do a good job of phrasing my question for Campbell about this yesterday or Monday was, is this the difference across the board, but especially with him as a coach of, Harbaugh, John Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl, won numerous playoff games. He knows how to get his team ready for games that matter. This is something Campbell hasn't done. They've played big games, of course. There's lots of big games in the NFL for tension, the season opener, the Green Bay game, and all that. But a game that determines your future, that you have to win this to advance or to win the division or whatever. They haven't played those games yet. And this is a good example of that, because the Ravens are going to make the playoffs. They're a very good team, and it was such a slap down, it wasn't we got beat by Justin Tucker, on a 66-yarder. It was we weren't even on the field with them. So that's what is not great, is that nobody expected this kind of result. So, and that's where I think Campbell says, this is not going to happen. I guarantee it. It's not going to happen again. I don't know if he said this week or again, but probably again. I mean, I think he's going to realize, hey, when we're playing a good team, we got to be ready. We got to be ready for their best shot. And it's a fine balance, right? Because you kind of don't want to have your players buy into the hype too much. And they kind of have been hearing it in the locker room a little bit, we can beat anybody, we can play with anybody, we can compete with anybody, all this stuff. It's good to have confidence. But when you're overconfident, it's dangerous. And this kind of thing can happen sometimes. But also, that's where I don't know. I don't know with Campbell of how much he tells the players, like, hey, you guys are good, but you're going to get everybody's best shot now. And you got to be ready for that. So there's a responsibility that comes with being good. It's all the fun stuff and all the accolades and all the whatever players of the week and this and that. That's great. And it's okay, but you got to be ready. Every time you step into that ring, the little dude's going to try to knock you out, like you got to be ready for that. And that dude's motivated. So be careful. And so I think he's not going to let something like this. And I asked him about that. Were you surprised that these kind of blowout games are still in your system, a year later? And, and he said, he was and he wasn't, but they can't get caught. So, surprised like that again.
No, and I don't know that they will. Since they're not going to lose, but yeah, they got to be ready. The detail, all those things you talked about, or Campbell talked about, and that we have talked about. I would be surprised to see that kind of performance again. At least the rest of the regular season. It's again not to say they're not going to lose a few more. They surely they are. They'll lose 2, 3, maybe even 4 more games. Who knows at this point? But I don't think we'll see that kind of. I don't want to say effort because Campbell was really intent on pointing out that they had plenty of energy and that wasn't the issue. It was the focus and the detail. And we saw that during the game, guys kind of miscommunicating and pointing finger, right? So not knowing where to be. Baltimore did a great job of confusing them on both sides, confusing the defense and especially the offense, getting them all sorts of fronts and then getting to golf. But in any case, so Monday night, the Raiders come in. First Monday night game in a while. The last one didn't go so well, but you and I will be there, and the place would be rocking, I would imagine, and it should be fun. Yeah. In the meantime, pardon me.
Oh yeah, it'll be rocking for sure.
No, sorry. In the meantime, let's take a quick break and come back and talk about Michigan football and everything that's going on in Ann Arbor right now. And I want to get your thoughts on that. All right, we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, what the heck is going on in Ann Arbor? You got an undefeated team, number 2 ranked team in the country. It's supposed to be all good and sunny. By the way, it's almost 80 degrees as we're recording this, or at least in the mid-70s. T-shirt weather. Here we are in late October. That feels great. The leaves are turning. The color's really beautiful. And yet we're talking about guys video recording and opponents, former military folks that are video recording and spying allegedly and stealing signs allegedly and all this kind of, I don't want to call them nonsense because I don't want to dismiss it, because if it's true, I think it's worse than recruiting violations to me. It's actually quite serious. You're trying to cheat the game if that's true. But what do you make of what's going on in the reports and what you've heard and seen so far?
I mean, it's just, part of it is just, it feels like, the continuation, just yet another thing that happens under Harbaugh. I think he said once about Urban Meyer, it's interesting or whatever that controversy seems to follow him wherever he goes, and Harbaugh isn't going anywhere, but controversy seems to follow him, around Ann Arbor, I guess, and it's just as a sports writer, he's the gift that keeps on giving, because there's always something interesting. Maybe it's really good or it's bad, but there's always something going on. For fans, I think it's exhausting probably. You want to just be able to enjoy this ride, and that, Michigan's tracking toward, a national championship, and on this is the 25th anniversary. Or 25th, right? Their last one, 26th. I'm sorry, I'm a year behind. I wish I was younger, but yeah, it's just another thing, and it didn't go so well last time, right? When he didn't cooperate fully with investigators and he got suspended, and it's a shame. And whether this guy Stalions was a rogue actor or someone was directing him to do this and to attend games in person and to steal their signs or to use recording devices, whatever, that's not good. I mean, the thing about it to me, and I don't know anything, but to me, it seems like I can't imagine somebody just doing this on their own without the knowledge of somebody in the program, whether that's Harbaugh or a lower level assistant or a coordinator, who knows? And maybe he did. Maybe he's just a complete rogue actor out there just going out on his own, trying to do stuff and whatever, help the program whatever way and give people plausible deniability. Wherever you don't worry about it, I would imagine there's a report out there that he went to 30. He bought tickets to 30 Big Ten games. I would imagine he tried to expense that and probably not eating it himself, but maybe, who knows? But it's just not, it's not a good look for the program. It's not a good look for Harbaugh. And I don't know. I mean, maybe winning cures everything, Shawn. Maybe that's just going to be forgiven because when Harbaugh's winning at such an unprecedented rate, we're just going to have to kind of live with this kind of just these little twists and turns and distractions. And, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but it's a little exhausting, isn't it?
No, it is. And yeah, we have no idea if they're guilty of anything or not. Harbaugh denied it in a statement and said he had no knowledge and et cetera, et cetera. I am with you. It is possible the guy just was taking this on himself, but he was on the payroll, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little hard to believe that he wasn't collecting information for somebody else, right, who's tied to the program in some way. That doesn't mean Harbaugh knew, and maybe not, but it's just, look, and I know we're not often in the business of speculation, but at least at this point, you're right. It's not a great look, even though, hey, we want to let the due process play out. We all understand that the NCAA is going to do its thing, whatever else you think about the NCAA. But it also doesn't probably look good that this has been going on for 3 years and it sort of lines up with Michigan's run of dominance. I'm not saying they're related at all, but I know there are a lot of people out there that look at that and, are raising their eyebrows because of that, right?
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing, unfortunately. Now, maybe Harbaugh had nothing at all to do with this or the top level of his staff, and it's just an unfortunate incident. But because... And look, I don't want to make too big a deal about the recruiting issues. They were not serious recruiting violations, but the fact that he was tussling back and forth, I don't know, maybe in his own mind he was trying to take the high road with the NCAA and they accuse him of lying and all that. But the fact that you're right, it's just he can't seem to go, and of course Saturday night after Michigan won, was it 49-0 over Michigan State up in East Lansing, he was talking about, he didn't say he was asked if there was a target on his back, and he agreed that. He didn't offer that up, but he did offer up unsolicited that there were those out there trying to diminish the team. Now, he mostly meant the schedule, but it was sort of a larger point. He was trying to make a larger point that, people are trying to get after you. They'll always come after you when it's successful, and that's fine. He can say that, I suppose, but I don't know. I just, you're right. As long as they're winning, it's fine. But I can't imagine that the university, the board, the president, other people high up in the university are enjoying what seems like the constant run of negative headlines.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, the only thing, I mean, maybe people are out to get the program or to embarrass them or whatever. But I mean, so many instances, right? The Mozzie Smith thing, the Matt Weiss thing, the Shemi Schembechler thing, he didn't do himself any favors by not being as forthcoming with the NCAA investigators as he should have been. He brought that upon himself. Now this thing, I mean, it's like, at the very least, it speaks to sort of a lack of institutional control within your own program. Like you don't have a full tight grip on every single thing that's happening if you're allowing these things to keep happening, even if you don't know about them. So ignorance is your best defense, like that's not great. That basically means these things are gonna keep happening because you don't have that kind of level of strict, strong control over your assistants, the people who are in your program, who are the support people. That has to change. And I don't know how Harbaugh is as an administrator and as a chief executive, of if it's just like, hey, I'm just going to be designing plays and whatever, talking to my players and making sure we know how to handle the red zone and third down, and I don't really care what these other guys are doing. I hire people, they hire people, and it's not up to me to control that. Unfortunately, in college, you have to do that. You have to be able to. And it comes from the NFL. Where it was even a bigger, production, even more people to keep track of. And, the rules aren't the same, but still you have to have control over the people that you manage. And that's the question I have of how do you change this? Why does this keep happening and how do you change it? Because just saying I had no knowledge of this is just not a great explanation.
No, in the other instances you mentioned, and I'm not somebody that likes to link, although I know there's some, and I'm not saying you were trying to do that. There are others that have done that, and I understand why they do it, especially if they have an agenda. Not everybody does, or it's just because it's easy to do it. But I don't link it all together. This one potentially, and the recruiting violation, stepping in and breaking some of the rules during COVID and doing some things they should not have done. To me, these are a lot closer. Like Matt Weiss, that's not Harbaugh's fault, right? Who's
hiring these people? If you had anybody else, if you had people at the Free Press, if we had an editor at the Free Press, and I get in trouble for doing something bad in my reporting, then you get in trouble a few months later for doing something, and then someone else gets in trouble. Our editor is going to have to answer to their boss about, like, why do you keep having this happen? Why do you keep embarrassing the newspaper and the corporation?
Yeah, but we don't have the same scrutiny. And you and I both know, without getting too insiderish, that hey, every company has stuff like that, including ours, and it just does. So I don't hold Weiss against them at all, because people like that get jobs. And I don't want to say people like that, but folks that have whatever issues can handle themselves in certain ways and get through, and then all of a sudden it leaks out and you find out things you didn't know about them. That happens at every company, every organization in this country. And I understand that. That to me, I don't know. He's only had one of those. I mean, Mozzie Smith, again, that's even different from Matt Weiss. It's just a player who made a mistake in terms of paperwork. Should he have been suspended? That's the argument, right? Maybe so. Maybe he should have been suspended a game. Harbaugh clearly thought that the infraction, that he was on his way, he was not trying to fool anybody, and it didn't merit it. You can argue about that. What was the third one? Schembechler. Yeah, to me that's of the three. To me, that's the most egregious one. Not vetting him.
Not vetting. You're not vetting these people properly. Even Weiss,
you can't vet him. You can't vet. How do you vet Weiss? You don't vet somebody like that. Every organization has people come in through like that. We have. I mean, right? Everybody has. So it's just, and I don't. Yeah, to me, you can't vet that. The Schembechler stuff, though, the information was out there. Like, you can't vet what's in somebody's head,
right?
Whatever kind of proclivity they have, whatever kind of internal struggle, turmoil, you can't vet that. But you can with Schembechler, right? You can. I mean, because the information's out there. So to me, they're not all the same. And that's separate from, but over the course of time, people do what you just did. I'm not saying you did that, but they lump it together. And it starts to add up to this overall picture of what is going on.
Well, I think you should lump it together. Absolutely. I mean, it's like if you are in your job and you do one thing wrong and then you do something else that's wrong, that's not related to the same thing, you do something else wrong. Well, it's not all the same thing, but it's a history, sort of a consistent, timeline or whatever you want to call it, of these infractions, of these mistakes. And at the end of the day, it's not that you don't have to have 3 strikes on the same thing and then you're out. It's just, how do these things keep happening? Why do they keep happening? And let's be honest. I mean, if he weren't winning, he'd be gone. He'd be gone if he wasn't winning. But he's winning at such an incredible rate. You know, a lot of that is forgiven. The administration, you know, has to turn a blind eye, because what are they going to do? You know, he's holding all the cards. You know, he's going to be making, and he's making a championship run now. And if J.J. McCarthy, even if he leaves, you know, a lot of these backups are getting significant playing time because of these blowouts. That's going to help perpetuate a better team next year too, even if they lose some of the top tier talent. It's kind of going to be a little bit of a factory that way if they keep going. So it's, you know, what are you going to, unless he does something so egregious, right? Something really, really, you know, just against the law, then I think that this is what we're going to have. We're going to have a program under Harbaugh where this is just going to keep happening. These kind of infractions are going to keep happening, and they're going to have to live with it.
I just want to say that of the 5 things we're lumping together, and I don't like lumping them together. You do, that's fine. We disagree on that, and that's okay. To me, if this is true with the latest, that's by far the worst thing. You know, he didn't, like I said, it didn't have anything to do with Weiss. The Schembechler, it was just kind of lazy diligence. I mean, I don't want to call it lazy. I mean, maybe it's hard to dig up somebody's social media account from who knows? I mean, whatever. You can at least sort of understand that. And the Mozzie Smith thing, you know, the whole cheeseburger, being with COVID or being with recruits when you should have been having an extra coach on the field, I think at one point, or maybe it was on Zoom and they were sort of given instruction when they should have been. There were a few things like that. But this goes against the I mean, if this is true, that's a different kind of advantage, and it goes against the integrity of the game, which I know is a phrase a lot of people are going to say, well, that's an oxymoron, right? And you're sort of setting yourself up there for that. But to me, if this is true, this is a different level from many of those other things. Those other things, well, the last recruiting thing, but the first 3 things are just, it's an individual. It's an individual that had an issue of some kind. Weiss was a bit more than an issue, but yeah, that's not institutional. But this, yeah, if this were true, Carlos, I mean, what kind of punishment are we talking about? What should happen if this is true? If he knew about it, should he lose his job?
No. I mean, I think, what would the penalty be? That's the question. What kind of, you know, would he get a year? You know, would the program be punished? Would they be suspended? Would they have to vacate wins? I mean, who knows?
Absolutely.
Who knows?
To me, you'd need to vacate wins, and he just got 3 games for minor violations that haven't even been proven yet.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, Shawn. I mean, I think that, you know, this is how we've usually thought about coaches like Urban Meyer in the past. You know, and it's. I think when you cheat the game, you're absolutely right. You know, I'm only lumping them in as so far as just it's a you know, pattern of. I don't want to say behavior, but just a pattern of infractions that have happened, incidents that have happened under his watch. But this one, if it's all the president's men, if it's Watergate, you know, Spygate, right? I mean, if it's that's where it becomes a different animal, and you get a lot more national heat for this is cheating, you know, cheating the game. You've played a lot of different teams. This is almost as close to unforgivable within the sport as you can find, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
Hey, Carlos, you, real quickly, you said national. I mean, it's not just ESPN, right? These were part of the national ABC, CBS broadcast news, right? I mean,
no, I mean just nationally. I mean, just from every other program in the country,
right,
other fan base.
This story, right? But I'm saying this story jumped out of the sports pages and into the news side nationally.
Nobody cares. Nobody knows who Jim Harbaugh is. You know, if
I watched Muir last week on ABC News. It
must have been a slow day because nobody cares.
No. I had people. That's not true. I had people talking to me outside of sports who don't care about sports. What's going on? Because they'd heard about it on news sites, not sports sites, news sites, or seen it on CNN or whatever.
Yeah. It might have been a slow day, which is weird with the war going on in Israel. But
no, because it's
and in Ukraine
speaks to something that it speaks to. You start throwing around integrity. You start talking about stealing signs. It's anti-competition, right? And that's something that's near and dear to this culture, and whether it's sports or not. And that's what it spoke to a little bit. That's why it left off the sports pages last week. I mean, that's something. Whether it's true or not, again, we have no idea. It may well not be. But there's a reason that it got a lot of interest last week.
It's weird. I guess it's something that's more easily digestible to the lay public, the non-sports public, is stealing signs, as opposed to NCAA,
right.
Level 1, level 2 violations and whatever,
right.
That, like, what?
Right.
And,
no, exactly.
In-person recruiting. So maybe it's easier to understand. And especially, it's not that long ago from the Astros, sign stealing or, cheating stuff, what they were going through. So yeah, I guess that resonates in some way. Cheating, Spygate with the Patriots, all that.
Stealing, those are, yep.
That makes sense, I guess. But yeah, I would be a very interesting question. And the thing with Harbaugh is he can always just pull the ripcord and go to the NFL and he'll be fine. So Michigan, Ward Manuel and Santa Ono and all these people, they have to, the regents and all that, they have to know, they have to decide what's, if there is any kind of, link to Harbaugh in any way, how much are they willing to live with, and I don't know. I mean, it's at the end of the day, let's be real. They looked a long time and waited a long time for a coach of Harbaugh's caliber to do what he's doing now. All the rich rods and the Brady hoax and all the things everything, and you finally have the coach that you always wanted and thought you should have. And it's a little bit of a rough road right now. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure donations are up, enrollment's up, endowments up, probably everything's up because of him.
I'm sure. And again, let's reiterate, nothing's been proven, at least not publicly, that we know of yet. That there's no report, there's no finish to any of this. And it may well be nothing, like you said at the top of this segment, a rogue actor. So we want to be fair here in that way and keep the journalistic principles, just because we're talking, and we don't want to forget those just because we're, rapping here in a podcast. So we'll let that play out. But we can obviously talk about what it looks like, and yeah, it's a tough look. There's no question. We deal in reality, and we try to deal in truth, but there's also perception, and that is its own form of reality. I mean, that's somebody's reality, right? And
we already saw, and we saw at State, right? All the signs, "Don't steal my sign, Jim." They're going to get that at Columbus. They're going to get it at Penn State. It's going to be. Even if there's nothing behind it, even if there's no merit, if it's just this Stallions guy doing his own stuff, whatever, it's part of the lore now of you guys. They're going to be, guilty in the court of public opinion,
absolutely,
among their rivals.
Yeah. That's how it goes until you're proven innocent, right? And even then sometimes it doesn't matter. But in any case, they are in the midst of a great season. They got a lot of talent, and we'll see how this plays out. How they got some games coming up this next month, so that should tell us a little bit more about who they really are, and that should be fun. And let's hope we can have some fun with that, and it doesn't all fall apart, at least for these kids on the student athletes. On the
student athletes. All right,
let's take
pros, professional athletes. Yes.
Yeah. Let's take one more quick break here. Yeah, they are. One more quick break here, and we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Show. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson. Shawn, Carlos, it's that time of the show. Let me hear it. What was your favorite thing?
Mine is short and sweet, and I know you're going to steal it because I know it's too easy. It's low-hanging fruit. But my favorite thing, which I'm sure it's going to be your favorite thing in some way, is being invited to your house to watch the game with your two boys. This is the Lions game on Sunday, And it was tough. I felt bad for the boys. They were frustrated, as I'm sure all Lions fans were. But my favorite thing...
You're 0 for 2, by the way.
I'm 0 for 2 coming to watch the Lions at your house when the Lions are on the road playing a team that wears purple. So it's really me. If you really want to blame somebody for this loss, I'm going to tell Coach Campbell it's really on me. I got to be better. Anyway, but my favorite thing was that, Shawn, as you know, you cooked up a storm. You made me eggs Benedict. You made a Dutch baby. You made Sam a hot dog, a coney dog, basically. I don't know how we could eat it, but there was just food galore. But you made some guac, really wonderful guac. But my favorite thing was you made this amazing salsa, and jalapeno, tomato, adobo chili, or no, it was a chipotle chili and adobo sauce. And you blended it all together, cilantro, maybe a touch of sugar, a little pinch of sugar.
Depends on the tomato, but yeah, a little lime, little onion.
And I know you don't think I'm really Mexican, but I am. I promise you, I grew up.
I would never say that.
I grew up in LA, or as you call it, Palm Springs. But in a Mexican household, where there was salsa, homemade salsa all the time. And I have to say, this is the best salsa I've ever had in my life. And I've been to Mexico.
Oh my goodness.
I've had my grandmas, my aunts, my moms. I've eaten a lot of Mexican food in my day. Mostly at Taco Bell, probably in Palm Springs, as you would, categorize it. But I've had a lot, Shawn. And this was, and you gave me the recipe. I'm going to try to duplicate it. It's going to take a while before I get it right, and try to get it as close as yours. But I gave some. I brought you. You gave me a little extra the other day. We saw each other at the Lions on Monday. You brought me a little container, and I brought it home. And I told my wife Janice, who she loves hot food and everything too. I said, "You got to try this." And she was like, "Yep, it's pretty damn good." But to me, it is. I'm not kidding you. It is the best salsa I've ever had. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
Was amazing.
Did you try the pot roast?
I have not tried the pot roast yet. I couldn't have lunch at home today, but tomorrow I will. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Okay. Yeah, good. It's just a little taste, as we like to say. No, I'm not going to steal. My favorite thing was not the salsa. I do enjoy the salsa. I like making scrambled eggs and putting that very salsa on scrambled eggs. It's a very good breakfast, and it's really simple. If you do like scrambled eggs. No, but my favorite thing was sort of the same. It was great to have you over. My boys really enjoy your wit and your kind of eye that's askew on the sports world, and they're contrarian. They enjoy that, and they enjoy your humor, and it was fun for them to have you over. They did not enjoy the whipping, the beatdown, I should say. Sorry, I don't want to say whipping, beatdown, the 38-6. But they really enjoyed having you over. They're used to that kind of food, so that's not that big a deal to them.
Privileged.
But, I know a lot of people say that to them when they come over here and eat. They're like, but the truth is, that's when we're cooking for people. We used to cook every night, when they were little, and we had the table, family dinner at the table, and so forth. And that was important to us to do that. But these days, it's just you mix in carry out, you do something that's simple, you make a grilled cheese and a boxed tomato soup. So we don't quite cook like we used to that way. But no, in any case, it was nice to have you over. Thank you again for the Washtenaw Dairy Donuts. For those of y'all that are not Michigan fans or not been to Ann Arbor, I'm going to plug the Washtenaw Dairy. The Lions are out the door for their ice cream. I think it's Stroh's ice cream in the summer. When my boys were little, they loved the Superman flavor. But my favorite thing at that dairy are those donuts. And and the older guys, I'm creeping up on being one of them these days. But when I was in my 20s, I'd go in there back when you read your paper in print and get a cup of coffee. It's old school coffee, nothing fancy. And read the paper and get a couple of those donuts, which they make themselves. They're really good. They're cake donuts.
They're fantastic. And by the way, just to clarify for the listener out there, Shawn's the boys are in their 20s, so they're not little kids. But I also especially enjoyed. It was the dichotomy of Sam was clinging to hope, man. He was like, listen, we're down to whatever it was, 24-0 or whatever. Like, listen, okay, we score here at the end of the second quarter. We get the ball in the second half. He was like the eternal optimist. I loved it. But Jake's like looking at him saying, what gives you any hope that anything's going to change? What have they done? What have they done, Sam? He's like watching that. I felt so, it was funny, but I felt bad for Sam, like trying to hold on to any little ember of hope.
Yeah, Jake said it was over after the second touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. Which he was right. Yeah, no, they're both optimistic, but yeah, they're in their early 20s, and they made the trip. Well, Sam did. He made the trip over because you were coming, right? So that was fun because he's we see he lives not too far from here, but so we see him some, but that was nice too. I got to hang out with my boys. I don't get to do that very often, so that was fun too. I mean, obviously you were the main draw, and I've got no problem admitting that. But no, that was fun. All right, let's thank some people, Carlos, and get you on out of here, and get Robin on out of here. We'll start with thanking Robin Chan, the producer who makes this happen. Let's thank Kirkland Crawford, the sports editor, Anjanette Delgado, the editor, Nicole,
executive editor.
Executive editor. God, I know
another infraction. See, these are piling up.
Changing of the nomenclature, whatever. They changed the title structure after 70 years of newspaper. You know what I mean? But that's okay. Now I sound like you. I get
readers love change.
Yeah. And Nicole Avery Nichols, who runs the whole paper. Let's just say that.
She's the editor. Boss. Yes.
Yeah, she's the editor. Anjanette Delgado is the executive editor. We did not mention her name earlier in the podcast. Hopefully we won't get in trouble with that. Mostly want to thank you, the listener. Carlos, where can we find this podcast?
You can find it on any CompuServe website, MySpace, Zune, players. No, you can find it on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you find your podcast. If you're listening to this, you've already found it. Why are we telling you? We're insulting
Exactly.
you.
We're not. Yeah, that's something that podcast people want us to say. We don't need to say that anymore. What we really need to say is when you find us and you don't listen to us, or even before, give us a rating, subscribe, tell us what you think, jot your thoughts down. That's what we're really trying to tell you. Because obviously, you guys are more technically proficient than we are. What do you mean? Where do you find your podcast? You're right. We're already here. All right, man. It's been fun. Thanks again for making time. We'll do it again next year. Oh, who knows?
Next year. Next week.
I actually enjoyed that. And I'm going to propose to our editor, Kirkland Crawford, that if they make the playoffs this year, you and I get to watch it at my house. I'll cook for you. And we'll write that way. You know what I mean?
Who?
We'll let the boys will come. We'll let, Mitch Albom and Jeff Seidel and...
Oh, we're not going to go to the playoff game?
They can all go to the playoff game. You come over here and I'll cook. We'll watch the playoff game.
Oh, I'm sure that'll be fine. Yeah. They're hosting a home playoff game for the first time ever. Yeah, well, Shawn and I are going to be hanging at we're going to be playing his pinball machine or whatever.
And we'll right from here. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be.
I think, well, I vote for that.
I second the vote. Tell me what Kirk says.
Yeah.
Anjanette right now has she's filing the termination papers for us right now.
Termination papers? Okay.
Didn't only mention me twice, and now they want to stay home for the playoff game.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how it goes. All right. Good to see you. And we will talk together and with y'all next week when we return with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.